The following is a presentation of Geekster Media.
Hey there, and welcome to the latest episode of the Geekster Geek Out podcast. On this show, we give interesting people who are known for their fandom of a particular corner of pop culture a chance to geek out about another obsession that they are rarely invited to discuss on any other platform. This time around, we're joined by a distinguished gentleman who's known for writing about his knowledge of Power Rangers, comic books, action figures, 90s teen sitcoms. On his blog, West Week Ever, he's been doing it for over 20 years. But now he's got a different song to sing. So, William Bruce West, it's time for you to complete the phrase I never get to talk about
Boy band.
boy bands. Oh, this is so interesting. You and I have conversations about a lot of things. We podcast together. We do a lot of interesting, discussions of the past. But boy bands is one of those things. I don't know if anybody just sits down and talks about this phenomenon, especially of the late 90s, but also really we're going to get into this, like the history of music, of pop music. It's been around a long time, but let's start here, Will. What do you think was the first boy band that you actually heard, that you were exposed to?
Oh man, because then you get into the whole thing of like what constitutes a boy band. Like, were Boys to Men a boy band? Were the Beach Boys a boy band? I always tell people the Beatles were a boy band that played their own instruments. But I think like when it comes down to like what we consider a boy band, it would be New Kids on the Block. Like that was the first one that I heard, and I didn't love it. Like that was not when the conversion happened. New Kids on the Block was around the time I was in like third grade, and you're at that age where like girls are yucky and you don't like things that girls like. So it's like girls loved New Kids on the Block, and I didn't. Because that was my role in the gender wars. And like even revisiting though, like I don't like their songs. I don't think they're well written. Like they have catchy hooks, but like I feel like anybody who's a hardcore NKOTB fan, it was like that was all they had back then. But I can't see anyone who lived like through the golden pop explosion of like 97 to 2000, how they would still prefer New Kids on the Block. So for me, it was Backstreet Boys was what like brought me to the fold. But the first one I remember is New Kids.
Yeah, I think for our generation, New Kids on the Block, like they had like the most publicity. I mean, it was crazy for me. I remember hearing it for the first time, getting the Hangin' Tough album. I grow out a rat tail. I'm starting to wear denim jackets. I'm getting the family camcorder out. We're doing lip sync videos of New Kids on the Block. Disney Channel's doing specials of their step-by-step tour. Going to my friend's house, gotta watch that. Like I bought the John Knight doll, like like you couldn't escape them, to the point where like even like my friends, when we would get together, like I said, did some stuff on a camcorder, but there was this one family I hung out with all the time. We would just put on the step by step album in their living room. There was like six brothers and sisters and me, and we all just, did our dance moves, and we all knew our different parts, like you sing this, you sing that. So yeah, it was a phenomenon. Now, what I want to ask you is this: when we get into the history of the boy band idea, because like you said, what constitutes a boy band? With Maurice Starr, who was like the producer creator of New Kids on the Block, the guy who brought them together, he started with like New Edition and like these other groups. And I think what he understood is popular culture takes the awesome music created by black music artists, and then going back to Elvis, going back to whoever, and as soon as that is adapted, whether it's the blues or whatever else, by a white artist, then it becomes a huge thing. There might be a few crossover hits for the black artist, and he's like, I could do this again and make way more money with a couple white boys from Boston. So I find that interesting. When you look back at the 50s, which is where you would think it really started, there were doo-wop groups. And, a lot of them were people of color that were really like giving fantastic music. But then you get Dion and the Belmonts singing Teenager in Love or whatever, like these groups like that. So in your excavation of the history, digging through, have you seen like that trend?
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely there in terms of like you had it right the way like history worked because I went through like a huge Motown phase like senior year of college where I was like reading all the books, all the biographies because it was the same time this documentary came out called Standing in the Shadows of Motown, and it focused on the Funk Brothers who were like the backing band of all the hits. And like one thing about like with Motown artists like with the Temptations and everything, when they first came out, even though like you could hear what they were like before they really became huge, like the album covers had white people on it because they didn't think the customers were going to gravitate towards these black artists. Like, so you would get a Temptations album and it would be a picture of like white kids at the beach or at like the sock hop. And like they really fought for like we should be on the cover of our own albums. So that was a big deal. There's a clip that like floats around every now and then of Frankie Lyman when he was on, I want to say it's American Bandstand, but Frankie Lyman, famous for Why Do Fools Fall in Love, he didn't sound necessarily black on the recording. So this bandstand performance is like the first time audiences are seeing him, and these teenage girls are discovering he's black, and there's like this look of like, oh my God, I had a crush on this guy. My father's gonna kill me. Like all this, like you just see their illusion shattered, and it's so uncomfortable. And he's just doing the performance of it because that's his like TV debut. So it's like that was music back then, you know, that was how the business worked. So, like, yeah, I mean, when I got my last car and had Sirius for the first time, I was like, there's a channel devoted to every decade. So I was really into like 60s on 6 with like Cousin Brucey and all those like artists. So it was like Jay and the Americans and like just all of the Dion. We could say those are boy bands, but they were singing groups comprised of boys. To me, a boy band is a marketing vehicle and it's a phenomenon. Like these guys were like one hit wonders, they'd swap throughout bands, that kind of thing. But like New Kids is like it's the merchandise, it's the shopping mall tours, it's the like the Saturday morning cartoon. Like they're the one where I feel like it became an enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to your point, when you think of boy band, it's definitely not organized by the people in the group. It is outside forces, producers, record companies saying, "We need an act like this. Let's find the talent and let's get them out there in front of the people." Especially, again, yeah, the tween girls who are going to be their biggest audience. These young girls, they're scared of boys, but here are these boys that look cute and can sing. Okay, we're gonna go with that. So let's talk about that because, like you're saying, this is a trend that really kicks off in a big way in the late 90s. Early 90s, we got grunge and Nirvana. Like the New Kids were the tail end of the 80s, early 90s, and then they're out because it's not cool. Now you got to be from Seattle. Now you got to be wearing flannel. Now you got to be, just like moaning about how terrible life is. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the decade, we're getting out of this. We're getting into this thing where there are people with, frosted tips and like, just like baggy pants and whatever else. And they're dancing around, they're soulful, they're harmonizing. Like, so talk to me about discovering the Backstreet Boys. Do you consider of the 90s, were they really the first boy band of that type?
Yes, but not when people think. Because you're right in that like 90s was grunge and all that. Like I have this blind spot in my like head with music in terms of like we've talked about like the party and Paul Abdul and all that stuff. I don't really know, like it seems like such a blip to me because from like let's say the age of like 7 to about 11 to 12 I listened to country. And then I listened to soft rock or adult contemporary or at work radio. So it's like I knew the Richard Marx catalog and everything Peter Cetera had done and things like that. So like there was this radio station. A lot of people know about Radio Disney, but there was actually a competitor called Radio Oz.
Yeah.
Radio Oz was this like youth skewing. They had like a countdown and all that stuff. In fact, there was like a Fox radio countdown that would sometimes like it was a Fox Kids production that focused on pop that sometimes aired on Radio Oz affiliates. So I was really into Radio Oz because I was hearing things I wasn't hearing on like normal radio. I always like Chad Young, our buddy, and I always laugh about how pop didn't come to DC until 96 because we got this radio station called Z104. And like Z104 brought pop to this market. But the funny thing about it was like for the first 6 months, all it played was like Ultimate Dance Hits 96 on a loop because there was like nothing to program it with. So like anyway, I'm listening to Radio Oz before that during the soft rock days, and I remember there was this group called the Backstreet Boys with a song called We Got It Going On. And I was like, okay, this is kind of catchy, but it didn't take off. It never really made it to like mainstream radio. So what happened was Lou took them to Germany. So they spent 3 years in Europe, like, well, they dig this stuff over here. And then they built what we know as the Backstreet Boys and then came back in 96, 97. So the thing a lot of people in America never understood is why is this song called Backstreet's Back? Because we've never heard of you before. That's because that song is actually the lead single of their second European album. But when they come back to America, the album they release here is half their first album and half their second album. So like there's actually one additional international album of the Backstreet Boys that like most Americans have never heard. Sometimes a track would have been snuck on like a maxi single. There was that like promo CD that McDonald's sold with like Britney and NSYNC. They burned off some stuff on that, but like that's why it's Backstreet's Back because they were returning as far as Europe was concerned, but they were new to us. So like I was really into like their first American singles, Quit Playing Games with My Heart, is kind of catchy, but the video doesn't really work for teenage boys because, like, as a fan base, first off, let's back it up. I should never be a fan of this stuff. Like, I understand it's kind of like us talking about TNBC. This is for teenage girls, and I highly acknowledge that. But it wasn't like I had a crush on them or anything like that. It was more like I was in awe, like the power these guys had. You know, it was like even if like briefly that like they go to TRL and it shuts down Times Square. You know, it was like for a brief moment, this is kind of like how influencers are now. Like these guys had a lot of power and I wanted to be one so bad. And this is before I knew I could sing. I never really thought I could sing. It wasn't until high school when my drama teacher made us all audition for her shows that I was like, oh, I have a voice. And that led to like musicals, which led to a cappella, which led to whatever. But in this point in time, I don't think I can sing. Like it's puberty, voice is changing. So I'm like locked in my room singing along to these songs, like embarrassed that my mom's going to be like, what's that racket? Because she can tell you now, like I kept tearing up my heart by NSYNC on a loop for like the year of 1997. Like I love to this day, that's still one of my favorite pop songs because I love Max Martin. Max Martin is the reason. It's the same way like I tell people they love Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse was great, but Mark Ronson is why we love Amy Winehouse. It's the producer, it's the writer. So the same here. The pop explosion of the late 90s wouldn't exist without Max Martin. And that's why they all sound the same, but also like you knew you made it when you had a Max Martin single. So it was just that whole like perfect storm. So like I wanted to be in a boy band and I've always like let's think of like civil rights in the sense that there's still a lot of firsts to be done out there. And I wanted to be the first black guy in a boy band because it wasn't done. it's still technically, because if they did, he was always biracial. They never had the black guy. There was well, we'll back it up. So Backstreet Boys kicked this off for me, and then NSYNC kind of snuck out. And it was weird because there wasn't a lot of fanfare, but their debut single was I Want You Back, another Max Martin song, and it sounded just like the Backstreet Boys, but it was around the time Backstreet's Back came out. And keep in mind, we don't have Google at this point. So I'm like, did they really just cannibalize one single with another? And then you find out, oh, it's a completely different band. And then they danced more and they had a little bit more of an edge to them. And then that just opened a whole can of worms for me. Like I was buying the magazines that normally girls buy, like I ordered because NSYNC, like Lou Pearlman figured out the assembly line. So he sent NSYNC to Germany. So there's a German NSYNC album that I had to have that I had my mom write a $50 check to this shady LLC with a P.O. box that never sent it. They never. So then I went on my school's class trip to Paris because I was like, well, if I'm in Europe, I can just grab these things while I'm over there. So it NSYNC begat Five, which begat Natural, which begat BB Mac, and then Westlife, and I own them all.
This is wild to me because yeah, because like to your point about New Kids on the Block, like I that's what I was going through with New Kids. Like I just wanted to be like them. I wanted to be as cool as them. And then yeah, that kind of cooled off for me. And then I just became a Weird Al devotee. And so like so I'm just like all about Weird Al for years and years. But the thing I remember hearing Backstreet Boys on the radio, but I didn't hear NSYNC. I remember I saw NSYNC for the first time on, I think it was the Ricky Lake show that they did an appearance there. And I remember being like, who are these guys? Because they held up this album and were like, NSYNC. Okay, that's interesting. And it may even have been a smaller talk show. It was a daytime talk show, though. And they just came out and performed. And I was like, oh, interesting. So this is like New Kids on the Block. All right. But I didn't really give them a second thought for whatever reason with NSYNC. And then, you and I, in high school in the late 90s, that it really became a huge thing. Like, I remember like at talent shows, a bunch of guys got together, did, Backstreet's Back, and they're doing their whole routine. There would be like lunchtime pep rally things, and people are doing bye 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 with all the choreography. Even like I got in on it, and I wasn't even like a fan per se, but I knew that girls were fans. So I asked a girl to the prom. I coordinated with her teacher during class. I'm going to come in at this time. I brought a bunch of my friends with me as backup dancers. It was like, I wanted to ask you to be my date to this year's prom. I'm down on my knees. It's like this. It was so
The first promposal.
yeah, but it worked, and she went with me. But yeah, it was a phenomenon that you couldn't escape. And like you say, like whether it also merchandised, like I mean, they were NSYNC dolls with the no strings attached, look, and the music videos got cooler and cooler that they were that they were premiering on TRL and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely, like you said, at that point, it was so weird though to say like, well, we had New Kids on the Block, but we never really had imitators of New Kids on the Block. And then it took all that time for it to happen again. But then, like you say, this guy Lou Pearlman's like, there's a whole like track that you take them on, and it works every time. It works every time. And it's just like that. How could that be? And all of us are thinking, oh, they're trying to riff off what they're doing here. They're trying to do that. It's like, oh no, they're not riffing. They were organized by the same exact group the whole time. It's just like, that's nuts.
It's like how one corporation owns all the sunglasses brands, but you don't really know it. Like NSYNC, they always say that like NSYNC's fame is actually the result of a fluke. Backstreet Boys were scheduled to do a Disney Channel concert because Disney Channel was doing regular like concert specials during this time, and they pulled out of it for like scheduling conflict. I think they told Lou they were tired because he's like working them to death. So he's like, okay, they gave it to NSYNC. That special is what introduced NSYNC to America. Like Pockets knew about NSYNC, but like that special is known as like that's what kind of like put them on the map. But like you were saying, it's this one guy, and he kind of knew he had to do it in secret. Like Backstreet Boys were never told about NSYNC. They found out about NSYNC, and they were not happy about that. So it was kind of it's only in like the hiatus years where they got cool with each other, and you'll see them at like shows together or they do each other's podcasts. But like back in that era, it was not cool. And the reason it came about somewhat organically is somewhat like incestuous in that they all came from Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
They were all just hanging around Orlando. Orlando was full of these like talented kids working for Disney who wanted to make it big. So it was really shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, like Chris Kirkpatrick apparently was in Backstreet Boys. Like there's a whole thing of like they were together in a group, then they got split up, then they brought in other people. And like you were saying, it's normally orchestrated, but Chris Kirkpatrick will say he is the founder of NSYNC. Like he put it together when he was working at Disney, and then they got the attention of Lou. But like generally, I mean, go back to Mickey Mouse Club, you've got JC and Justin from NSYNC, you've got Britney, you've got Christina Aguilera. They said Jessica Simpson auditioned but was turned down or refused it or whatever. But like everybody who got big during that era pretty much came from there. And there are even ties that a lot of people don't realize in the sense that like while they were trying to do the boy bands and the boy bands were huge, they were also trying to do girl bands, and none of them landed. Destiny's Child is really the only group from that era where you could be like, okay, they figured out the formula. But over in Lou's camp, there was Solid Harmony, the acronym SHE, because they ended Harmony with E. Their album's amazing. It has Max Martin tracks on it. It was never released in America, even though there's a track on a Jive sampler that came out. But then Britney was in a girl group called Innocence, and that group was managed by Lynn Harless, who's Justin Timberlake's mom. So, like, before Innocence recorded their album, they're like, okay, we're going to spin Britney off, and now you girls are the group. Innocence's album came out. I own it. It's horrible. And it's like Britney dodged a bullet. But it's like, for all the groups we know about, there's twice as many most people don't.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to talk about that too because you mentioned, seeing Backstreet Boys and NSYNC made you want to be in a boy band, right? And that was the thing. At this time, there in my area at least, like there were groups that were starting to form. It used to be a garage band. Like my friends and I, we were a heavy metal band, but that was not popular at the time. There were pop punk bands that were like a little bit more in the style because Blink 182 was huge. But like for example, I had a girl that I did children's theater with, professional children's theater, and she was a great singer, and so she was organizing a group. And this always cracked me up because there was an Irish girl group called Bewitched,
I
B
love
star
Bewitched.
witched, right?
Yes.
So as to not get any issues,
Right,
get
right.
get a cease and desist. So her group was called Enchanted. And it was a
I
and
love that.
yeah, so she was putting a group together, and I was just, I can't believe it. You're gonna be huge. Of course, it didn't happen, but it was one of those things where that was like the aspiration now, is that okay, you can put together a group. I mean, obviously Spice Girls. I mean, Spice Girls was the pinnacle, and they really like literally set the world on fire. But
They they were, and they really helped open the door, but they're also pretty much dead once the explosion happened. We got like two Spice Girls albums in the course of a year and a half. And like by the time we're really getting Backstreet and in sync, Jerry's already gone. Spice Girls are like, are we gonna keep going? That kind of thing. So it's like they opened the door, but they didn't get any of the spoils. Like
yeah, it's true. I mean, they got a movie and then it was kind of over. I do want to mention one girl group that really stood out to me because P. Diddy, was the one producing them, and I think they were the top as far as, I mean, Destiny's Child is the best, like the most successful. But what I'm saying is they were my favorite, and that was Dream.
Really?
Dream is so good, and I learned about them because I was working at a KB toy store. I was managing a KB toy store, and there was a toy called Hit Clips, if
I
you might
remember Hit
recall, which
Clips.
were
Yep.
these, this is before MP3 players were really huge. You could get a single song, it looked like a little single, like a CD on a little piece of plastic with a microchip inside, and you plugged it in your player and it would play that one song. And one of those songs was a Dream song, and I was just like, this is so cool. And then I walked over. It was in a mall, obviously it was KB Toys, and I walked through this department store one day, and in the makeup counter area, they're playing a Dream music video, and I'm like, what? Like, these girls are awesome. Everything's on fire around them, and they're dancing. Like, this is so cool. So like, I became a Dream fan, and they fizzled really fast, unfortunately. But for a while, they had P Diddy, producing them. They got the spotlight, and I think their music is pretty great. But where do you fall on
I
Dream?
I skipped Dream. So now when I go back, like I don't know, Bad Boy had a tank to it at this point, because it was like he was with Biggie and all these rap acts, and then we're like, what are you doing, Diddy? Like, what is happening with Dream? Like, that's not what we wanted from him. But then I would later like some of his making the band groups, but I just missed Dream. But back to Hit Clips, you only got 90 seconds of the song,
That's
and
true.
it was a modernization of Pocket Rockers, which for some reason I think of Sean Robert. Like our friend Sean Robert of the 80s, branded in the 80s, pops into my head when I think of Pocket Rockers. It would play one song and it was just like a Walkman. But yeah, like, I mean, that you really couldn't go wrong from like 97 to 2000. Like, and the sky was the limit because it really did seem like, this is going to sound so stupid, but like, even like regardless of where you lived or what you were doing, there was this magic in the air that there was a chance. Like there was a chance if you had any kind of like talent situation, like maybe you're a dancer but you don't sing that great, because Making the Band started, a lot of people associate Making the Band with Diddy because he had the MTV version. Making the Band started on ABC, and they launched O-Town, which was another Lou Pearlman group. The first 3 seasons of Making the Band are just O-Town, so you watch how it's basically Lou showing you how the sausage is made. Like the cross country tour to pick the boys. The fact that like the biracial one can't really sing, but he's cute and he can dance, so we can work on the singing. That sort of deal. And my favorite scene is they're about to negotiate their contracts, and on TV is the breaking news that NSYNC is suing him over their contract. It was amazing TV that like no one was watching, but for like me, I was just like eating it up with a spoon. But like I remember in the acapella days, and this is like once pop is kind of dying, but my group sang with this group called Phalanx from like Elizabethtown College or something, and their like main solo was like it. Like if it had been like 3 years sooner, this guy would have been on TRL, and he knew it, and he wanted to make it happen. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, we're doing it." And the group was like 7 members, so I guess they were gonna like cut 2 of them off, but like he was gonna do this. And you look at him, because even as much as I wanted it, I was always like, I'm too fat and I'm not cute enough. Because I honestly didn't have like a hot era till like sophomore year of college. So it's like when pop is really going, I'm like, they can hide me in the back. Maybe I'll be the one who wears the goggles. Like, so it's just kind of like, but there was this magic of like, I'm gonna be on TRL. And I'm this kind of person. It's the same way with like comics. I don't want to be a comic writer, but before I die, I want my name on one book. And it's the same thing with music. People laugh at one-hit wonders. I want nothing more than to be a one-hit wonder. I don't want to live that life. I want to taste it. And then I want to come back to normalcy, and maybe someone recognizes me in Five Below, like, "Hey, aren't you?" Like, "Nah, you got the wrong guy." But it's like, but just like one-hit wonderdom sounds amazing to me. So that was my life in that era. And these groups, they were coming out by the week. Because I mean, like I said, just in America, the ones we know from Lou are Backstreet, NSYNC, and kinda O-Town. But then you go abroad, and he had Natural. Their whole deal was they were a boy band that played their own instruments, and they never really made it out of Germany. But they got their own reality show that I happened to watch when I was studying abroad, which was just like making the band, with O-Town. But then I discovered all these other groups outside of his influence. This is so like cocky and conceited, but anyone who knows me knows I care about branding. That's why everything I have is William Bruce West, or my website was williambrucewest.com. Like, you keep it consistent. Well, back in the old Napster days of college, I stumbled upon this album by a group called Westlife. And I was like, well, I like their name. So I downloaded it and it was amazing. Like, it was better than anything, even though I think, same way I said in our other podcast, remember that show, that you can't have Saved by the Bell without Screech? I don't think you can have Pop without Max Martin, but Westlife never touched a Max Martin song. And there's still, I will say to this day, and it has been 20 plus years, Westlife is my favorite boy band in the world. Like, I can drill it down with, like, well, my favorite in America would be NSYNC. My favorite in the UK would be BB Mac, possibly. But in the world of all time would be Westlife, because they found ways to, like, NSYNC never really found a way to push past like 2001 when you got that like hip hop flavor. And I hate their last album because it's really just a demo for Justin's solo work. Like, I hate Celebrity, but like, once you get the hip hop infused pop, they were done. Over across the pond, that wasn't an issue. They're just like, throw more trumpets into it. Like, so they just kept evolving. There is a Westlife Frank Sinatra tribute album called Allow Us to Be Frank. Like, there's nothing these guys can't do. So that, like, at a time when most of, like, especially America was like falling out of love with boy bands, I just kind of took my talents abroad and found other groups. Boyzone, Take That, which gave us Robbie Williams. Like, there are so many out there that we just never get or never have heard.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what the oversaturation wrought, because there were also the parodies of boy bands which pointed out the ridiculousness. Now, my personal favorite is also a one-hit wonder, and that is the Meaty Cheesy Boys from Jack in the Box.
Oh,
Do you know about the Meaty Cheesy Boys?
no, because we don't have Jack in the Box in this region.
Oh wow. Okay, so they did this whole campaign for their ultimate cheeseburger. And they had a commercial which was like all the members of the band introducing themselves, and the joke at the end was EJ, the other EJ. Like, it was so funny. But like, they were like, I want the ultimate cheeseburger, meat, cheese, 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 meat, and that's it. Like, it was so funny. And they released a single like on CD that you could get. Like, it was the funniest thing, but it was like 100% just, this is Backstreet Boys, like, and we're making fun of them, and it was fantastic. And so whenever that commercial came on, I was just like, I'm in heaven, like, this is cracking me up. But then there was another show, I think it was on MTV, that I had a
Yep.
friend who, she loved like just anything that was ridiculous and silly. You and I have talked about this soap opera called Passions, and we may cover it on Remember That Show one of these days. But she was the one who introduced me to that. She's like, you got to watch this. But she was also watching this show. What was it called? Well, tell her about this parody show.
Together, with the
Together.
number two and gather. Well, there's a plus sign and gather. It was an MTV production. It started as a TV movie, and the TV movie was so successful, it turned into a show that got 2 seasons. And it is, like you said, it's a parody of what was going on with boy bands. There's this overweight slovenly guy called Bob Buss, who's supposed to be Lou Pearlman, who gets together this boy band, and it has like all the archetypes. So it's like the bad boy, the older brother, the cute one. In fact, the cute one's nickname is QT, you know? But the weird thing about Together, like they have two big singles in that there's Calculus, You Plus Me, and then there is The Hardest Part of Breaking Up, parentheses, is Getting Back Your Stuff. Now, I know that second one because my group Last Call recorded it, and I'm actually on it, like on our CD, because I pushed for that. Like anytime I could get a boy band song in there, like I did a boy band medley for a concert, things like that. So it was like I loved Together. But it was a weird like art imitating life situation in that it starts as a parody, but then they become a full-fledged band. Like they were opening for Britney, you know, and like Kevin Farley, Chris Farley's brother, is the older brother character.
Yeah.
He's probably the one most people recognize. But like honestly, it probably would have lasted longer than it did. But QT passed away from leukemia like during the tour. You
Whoa.
know, so it's like he gets kind of sick in season 2. They kind of do like a Suzanne Summers thing of like, oh, QT's on the phone, that deal. But like they did what they could, but like once that happened, it all like fell apart. But it was, while it lasted, it was great. And I didn't grow up with cable. It's my second catchphrase from Remember That Show. And so I recently watched the series on YouTube. We're talking like the last year or so, because my grail has been to get the TV movie. Like it goes for like 100, 150. People are bootlegging it, but I don't like to buy bootlegs of things that actually exist. So I'm like, it's on all my watch lists, but like you can watch the whole thing on YouTube, and I think y'all should because it's really great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point those out because like it was this phenomenon, and when there's a phenomenon, like it's going to be made fun of. I'm sure there was an issue of Cracked magazine with all the guys at NSYNC being hung by their puppet strings or something. You know, it's just how could they resist? So
Right.
yeah, and I don't know if there was. You tell me, do you feel like there was like a backlash or was there just the evolution? Like music passed them by? Because, like you said, it kind of became more hip hop infused, is kind of what happened. It was like moved away more to solo artists, not so much groups, and it is that sort of thing. So, what do you think as it petered out, you know, as the fad was passing them by, like what did it become? Or was there an actual like, hey, we're done with this?
I don't think there was like the day the music died for them, you know, but music did pass them by. And you got to remember that like they came from Mickey Mouse Club, and when they first like debuted, it was like this squeaky clean image. Like Lou had rules, like no real facial hair, no visible tattoos, no public girlfriends, things like that. Like you had to maintain the illusion. But as we're getting past Y2K, you got to have a little edge to you. This is when like Christina is no longer the genie in the bottle. She is ex Tina who wants to get dirty with two R's, and she's wearing chaps and under, you know what I mean? It's like you had like squeaky clean didn't work anymore. Like you saw the evolution of Britney, and suddenly the NSYNC guys are getting tattoos now. The Backstreet Boys are getting tattoos, but it's also kind of like real life stepped in too, because when you hit those highs, it's just further to fall. So like this is the same point in time Backstreet Boys kind of had to pull themselves out of the equation because AJ had to go to rehab. You know, like Nick had to go. Like there was actually like an Oprah Winfrey like intervention for AJ after the Black and Blue album. You know, so it was like they were gone till like maybe let's say like '08, you know, and like so they're celebrating their like 30th anniversary, but there are gaps in there, you know. And then it was like Justin tells NSYNC like, oh, I just need 6 months, 6 months to go do my solo album, and here we are 21 years later, you know. So it's like the writing was on the wall. My thing though is like all this stuff is cyclical and it never came back. we got close. We got close with One Direction versus The Wanted. It was a similar Backstreet NSYNC kind of dichotomy, but they didn't get that huge. And then you had Harry leaving to be their Justin. So it was like they fell apart. They all have solo albums that nobody cares
But
about.
now we have the K-pop bands, right?
Right. And that's the thing, is like I feel the K-pop thing has supplanted our like homegrown boy bands. And I don't even know how that ends because we don't have a script for that. Like, take BTS. BTS by far is the biggest all-male K-pop group, but they are on a break right now because of mandatory military service. Can you imagine what would have happened if Justin Timberlake got sent to Afghanistan? You
Wow.
know, like, so it's like, will they come back? Like, what happens in that situation? There's like 8 of them or something, you know? So, like, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I really, now, especially that like 90s fashions are coming back, there are all these TikToks of like moms saying, like, oh my God, I wore this in high school walking through Target. So I'm hoping it comes back, but like, it's weird because I'm 42, you know, and it's like I'm not supposed to still be into this stuff, but I am. Like, I every time I blog about music, it just dies on the vine because I can't find the audience. My audience, like, I do a musical countdown every year of my top 40 songs of that year, and I always preface it saying I have the musical taste of a white 15-year-old girl who lives in West Virginia. That means I like pop, I like country, I like a little hip hop, but like it's stuff that like grown-ups are still like, "Oh, did you hear that Toto cover of Africa?" Which I hate because it's a note for note cover, you know, like do something different with it. And I'm still like, "Oh, Sabrina Carpenter from Girl Meets World has a musical career now." So now I'm all into Sabrina Carpenter with my daughter, and nobody else my age is into that stuff. So it's like, I want it to come back, but then I'm going to be on a watch list if it does, because I'm going to go crazy.
Well, here's what I want to get a little bit of trivia out of you and a little bit of knowledge as we close out here. Because the first thing is you told me a little bit about the NSYNC name
Yes.
off mic, and this is something I didn't know, that there was a lost member of NSYNC. So can you tell me about this, the name and what it's all about?
Oh yeah, every group has a lost member, several in some cases. But like in sync, they say Justin's mom came up with this, but NSYNC is the last letter of each of their nicknames, like rearranged. So the reason this worked was their original base was a guy named Jason. So you had JC, you had Justin, you had Jason, you had Chris, and then you had Joey, and you mix them all up and you get in sync. Well, Jason left. So then they find Lance. Apparently, they all shared like a vocal coach. Like Justin used to have the same vocal coach as Lance, and he was somewhere in Mississippi. So they get Lance. The name doesn't work anymore. So when they were in Europe, they didn't try to push it so much when they came back to America. But while they're like building their name in Europe, if you find any of those teen magazines, they say that Lance's nickname is Lanston, Lansten, which makes no sense because that's longer than his actual name, but it preserves the acronym.
Yeah, I mean that is crazy to me. Yeah, that they felt they had to push it that far. Like, we got to stick with it. We got to make it work. So the other question that I have for you though is, of all these, Lou Pearlman bands, this world of bands, how were they set apart? Because you mentioned, for example, with Natural, they played their own instruments, but each one had to have a little something different. Like, because like some of them were trios, right? And then some of them like did like how did that work? Where you said like, well, they do their hair one way, and that's how they're unified. Like, how can you separate each group and say, well, this was their thing?
So Backstreet Boys are kind of like, they're the foundation. They really didn't need to like set themselves apart. They were like the prototype, you know? And then In Sync is Backstreet with more dancing. Because Backstreet, while they did choreographed routines, it was never hardcore dancing. There are a lot of times where they'll just sit on some stools and croon at you. And that's really what they do now because they're old. But like NSYNC, it was one of those deals of like, it was kind of like Destiny's Child, where they said Destiny's Child used to have to practice while jogging just to get their like stamina up. And
Yeah.
NSYNC's the same way. Like they are putting on a physical clinic. I've seen NSYNC twice, and it's just kind of like that is a performance. The music is still there. Their harmonies are actually better than Backstreet because NSYNC is closer to a 5-part harmony than Backstreet is. Backstreet's just like all tenors and baritones. I don't think they don't even really have a bass. Like Kevin's kind of low, but you don't hear a lot of Backstreet a cappella because they don't fill all the parts. But there's tons of NSYNC a cappella demos because it's 5-part harmony. Um, O-Town. O-Town's hook is that they're the boys next door and you watched them get formed. Like the reality show is what really gave O-Town its identity because the songs sound the same. Like they're getting the Max Martin stuff that the other groups are kind of passing on. Because like Backstreet passed on Britney's Baby One More Time because they thought it was about domestic violence. They didn't think it would come out right for them singing that. So then Britney got it and blows up. So it's kind of like this like buffet of songs
Well, yeah,
available.
yeah.
But
What I
yeah.
mean, what is Liquid Dreams? What is
Oh,
that?
you know what Liquid
Yeah.
Dreams is, which is amazing. Like, because honestly, even though I'm like 18 when that came out, it was like the past 5 years where I really sat down, and was like, wow, Clear Channel let that go on. Because Clear Channel's weird, or iHeartMedia now, where they don't like certain words, but they don't get context. That's why I think it's really AI like governed as far as radio airplay, because you can do a play on words and it's like, oh, they let that get through. But if it's just a smack word, then it gets censored. So yeah, Liquid Dreams is like it's not only like it's repulsive, it's embarrassing because it's a laundry list of all the celebrity women who give them wet dreams. So imagine they had to have met one of them at like the VMAs, and how does that interaction go? I met Rosario Dawson at San Diego, and my number one role in my head is kids. Kids is not a movie anybody should be discussing. So I can't say I loved you in Kids. So I said I loved you in Clerks too, which she didn't believe. Nobody would believe. So I can't imagine how O-Town dealt with that
Well,
situation.
if I meet Rosario, I'm actually going to talk about Josie and the Pussycats, but Clerks 2 is my favorite performance of hers. Like, it's my favorite Kevin Smith film because of her. So I don't know.
Really?
I'll just say that.
Still haven't seen Josie, even though I hear it's kind of like together in that like it plays on the tropes and all that.
Oh, it's
I
so good.
just bought it like in the past few months, but I know it's this darling of our like generation.
We're gonna have to watch it together, Will. So talk to me, LFO. What was their deal?
LFO. LFO are the like they're not really a boy band.
Hmm.
Like it starts their name stands for Light Funky Ones, but then it gets shortened to LFO. They're only known for New Kids on the Block had a bunch of hits, Summer Girls, which was like the song of 1999, like
Yeah.
that summer. But like that's not really their style. They were really like white boy rappers in a way. Like
Okay.
that was kind of like if you listen to the Light Funky Ones songs, that's kind of their deal. Like Summer Girls was kind of like a fluke song, but then like it changed their direction. You know, it's the same way I've always heard that like Sugar Ray was an entirely different band before like Every Morning. You know, so it's that same kind of situation. So then after that, you get the girl on TV because apparently Rich Cronin was dating Jennifer Love Hewitt and or trying to, which is how they got her in the video, but the song is just about her because you weren't really famous as a white guy in Hollywood in that era unless you dated Jennifer Love Hewitt. Like, look it up on Wikipedia. It's Carson Daly. It's Will Friedle. It's like she was like the trophy. So that LFO's thing was like they were from boy band parlance in like school analogy, they were the kids smoking behind school. Like you knew you could get drugs from LFO. That was like their edge.
Got it. Now, talk to me about this because I know there are more. What is the Lou Pearlman boy band again? This whole transatlantic group. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Transatlantic? Yeah.
transatlantic. Do
So
you know
what?
the story there? We have to tell the story.
Okay, let's. There's a whole documentary going on about this on Netflix right now. But yeah, give us the Cliff
Yeah,
Notes.
I won't go into the Ponzi scheme or all that.
Yeah.
No, Lou Lou's claim to fame is that he sources go back and forth on this, but he's allegedly the first cousin of Art Garfunkel. So like he was always name dropping his cousin and he wanted a taste of that fame. So he got into blimps, he got into airships and like he was always a con man. He basically got a contract with Jordache without a blimp and when they paid him, he used the money to quickly build the blimp which then crashed. So like this is Lou, but Lou parlays blimps into airplanes allegedly. What he did was he would take this model airplane and he took it to a runway and he filmed it at a particular angle to look like a real plane taking off and then he made brochures. The brochures were for his company Transcontinental Airlines. So he's getting investors left and right for his fleet of aircraft that don't exist. And that's what he parlays into Transcontinental Records, which is the boy band thing. So it was situated in Orlando and he operated out of an airplane hangar. And it was like this boot camp of like acts. They were all hanging out together. They would all come by his house for different reasons. It's in the documentaries, and you see the house on Making the Band. But like he had his own little compound in Florida under the guise of Transatlantic Records. He brought in Johnny Wright, who had managed New Kids on the Block, and his wife Donna, who would manage the girl groups. You know, so it's like that is so now we know Transcontinental Records. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like you said, he's just constantly building new talent, new talent, new talent. So what is the one for you? You know, you say you got all the albums. What is the one that just did not work? You can't say, "Oh, they actually have a good song." Like this is embarrassing that they tried this with these people. Like what would you say?
There's two.
Okay.
The first is C Note. And C Note is kind of like the Latin LFO, where it's like they're all like, I think maybe they were like Cuban, like being in Florida, but it's like it's the Latin LFO. There's not a hit single on that album. I don't think it ever got radio play, but it exists. I have the album. The biggest bomb to me, and this guy must hate his life right now. There was a member of Backstreet Boys who left because he decided, I don't want to do this group thing. I'm a solo act. So he releases his album under the name Phoenix Stone. His only single that made it to radio was called Nothing Good About Goodbye. It's not a top 20 song. It like no one knows who Phoenix Stone is. They don't even like talk about him in interviews at this point. But like as the kids say, he fumbled the bag. Like he the this man like when Taylor Swift's last album came out, I was really feeling bad for Joe Alwyn over in London. Like, oh, this whole album is about how you sucked as a boyfriend. But at the end of the day, I have felt bad for Phoenix Stone for 30 years because you made the wrong call. And it's just a bad album. But like otherwise, it should have worked. It's like imagine Nick Carter of age. Like he's still like the hot blonde guy, but he's legal because Nick Carter was like 13 when the band started. He can sing, but it's something about there's this hypnosis that occurs with five guys dancing with like you gotta have the five guys. So those are the ones that I think are Lou's biggest failures.
Hmm. And the last one I have is I just want to know. So some of these bands, obviously the bigger ones, are still out there. You know, Backstreet Boys still touring. In Sync, did Justin come back or never? Still never.
Still never. He dabbles because they reunited for a song for Trolls 3 because
Right.
that's basically his movie, and then they have a song on his album, but his album was a colossal failure. Like his tour is doing okay, but the album fell out of the top 200 in 4 weeks. So I'm thinking the reunion is closer than we think. They said it was about to happen, and then Britney's book came out, and it paints him as a quite the villain, so it kind of tanked the talks. But it's coming. It will happen.
But like, which of these bands would you want to go to see live? Like you said, you've already gone to see a couple of them, but like, if I mean, is it Together? Like who do you want to see actually perform live now?
That's a good. I always default to Backstreet because I never saw them, and I missed them 3 times because of COVID. Like 3 times. Like they kept renewing the tickets, and then a lightning storm came. So it's like I've never seen them, but there is a Backstreet documentary where Brian lost his voice almost a decade ago,
Yeah, I watched it.
and it honestly has not come back. Like it's one of the biggest secrets in like their corner of music where they cover for him, but his voice is gone. And like if you hear raw audio, it's just kind of like, dude, just turn his mic off. So like I don't want to put myself through that, but like the fact that I just never experienced that always gets to me. I saw NSYNC twice, like during NSYNC, so I don't need to see them again. If they reunited, I'd go, but they're still gonna be old guys. Um, I've seen O Town. I saw O Town last year because
Oh,
O Town is on. It's called the Pop 2K tour, and it does shopping malls. So it's like it's free. So like when I missed it this year, but like Chris Kirkpatrick hosts it. He's like the MC. O Town is back except for like one member. Ashley Parker Angel didn't want to come back, but they sound good without him. There's the lone member of LFO who like he does what he can with O-Town backing him. Then there's the non-Lachey of 98 Degrees.
we didn't even talk about 98 degrees,
there's
man.
there's the non-Lachey or weird guy because it's the
The guy with
Lachey
the
brothers, it's the
glasses, yeah.
weird guy, and it's Drew. No, well, not Drew, it's the other guy. So like he's in there, so they help him sing 98 Degrees songs, and then they rotate in and out like some other act. So yeah, I saw them at like Westfield Montgomery. I have video somewhere. I never like posted it because I felt so lame, but the women still come out for there's this whole like 35 to 40-year-old women, like they're there for it, they're screaming, they're just like. So I've seen O-Town. I wanted to see Westlife because Westlife they're Irish and they don't come over. They released their debut album here and it didn't work. Then they went to Nashville, like, hey, let's see if we can get some country flavor. Nothing ever came from that. Got huge in Europe. They came to America for St. Patrick's Day this year. And like I learned the tickets were like $500. And to even make it worse, their best singer is Mark. Mark is sick. Like Mark is like he's had surgery a couple times sick. So right before they came to America, he pulled out. So I would have been livid had I paid 500 before Ticketmaster fees to see this three-piece because one of their members went solo about a decade ago and it's the best singer. So I might have to go over there to see Westlife, but one day I'm going to see Westlife.
Well, I'm hoping you get to see Westlife with Bewitched. Is Bewitched going to get back together then?
I wish, because Bewitched were good. Like, we only really got 2 singles here, but like, I think they have 3 albums. Got them all. I loved what they were doing. So there's so much. If you just love bubblegum pop, Like, these songs don't have meaning. One of my favorite stories, there's two versions of I Want It That Way out there. America doesn't know this because in Europe, there's a completely different version on that album, and neither of them make sense. And the reason for that is Max Martin at the time didn't understand English. So he just kind of like came up with some nonsense that sounded right to him. It's the same way there's this video clip of like an Italian band from like the 70s singing gibberish, but it's what they thought American bands sounded like. It's the same story with I Want It That Way. He doesn't know what way he wants it, you know? It's just kind of like that was English to him back then.
That is amazing. Will, you are a fountain of knowledge. I know you could talk about this for years, but this has been really fun. I mean, just the gaps that you filled in, the little bits of like things that I heard on the radio and things happening on MTV, and now I know a little bit more. There's so much more to explore. But if people want to get a taste of your pop culture passion, where can they find you?
You can find me on social media at William B. West or my website, westweekever.com. Every Friday, we look at the week that was in popular culture. And of course, the podcast I co host with Adam called Remember That Show, where we look at possibly forgotten gems of the 80s and 90s when it comes to television. Everything from The Critic to Parker Lewis Can't Lose to the original X-Men animated pilot. There's something for everyone there.
Yes, and we will say if you like this vein of young people singing the hits of the day and some originals, we are going to be covering on Remember That Show in our next episode. Kids Incorporated. So we're going to be going back in time to see what that series is all about. We already mentioned one cast member, Jennifer Love Hewitt, was on the later season. So if that's of interest to you, you can definitely seek us out there. But again, Will, this was so much fun. Thanks for joining me. And hey, check out geekster.com for all your retro pop culture needs. There's lots of great articles being written, shows, just things that are going to hit that nostalgia bone for you. But hey, until next time, we'll see you later.
This has been a presentation of Geekster Media.